After her phenomenal audition for Britain's Got Talent, Susan Boyle untapped new heights of success that one can only dare to imagine. She wasn't an instant favorite, but her big, soulful voice would change everything for me. She would embark on a successful career. Her bank balance would exceed $45 million, and then she suddenly disappeared from the public eye. Join us as we reveal what happened to the singer and other parts of her story. Let me tell you the story of a woman who changed her life with just one song, Susan Boyle. She showed the world that you should never judge a book by its cover. When Susan auditioned for Britain's Got Talent, she was 47 years old. Most people didn't think a woman her age could be a pop star, but Susan didn't let that stop her. When she walked onto the stage, her look surprised everyone. The judges and the crowd didn't expect much from her. Some people even laughed. But when Susan started singing I Dreamed a Dream, she shocked everyone. Her voice was so powerful that it silenced the whole room. In that moment, she proved everyone wrong. That audition didn't just change the way people saw her, it changed her life. Susan Boyle went on to become a Grammy-winning artist. She sold over 25 million records. Even though she found success, people still remember how unfairly she was treated on that stage. Sadly, being judged and treated harshly wasn't new for Susan. Growing up, she was often bullied at school and in her town. Susan was born in Blackburn, Scotland, to a big family. Her parents were immigrants from Ireland, and they didn't have much money. Her dad, Patrick, was a World War II veteran who worked as a miner, and her mom, Bridget, helped out by working as a typist. With 10 children to care for, the family struggled to make ends meet. Susan's father had a huge impact on her dreams. When he wasn't working, Patrick sang at a local club called the Bishop's Blaze. Susan loved hearing her dad sing, and it made her want to become a singer too. Watching him perform sparked her dream of one day singing in front of large crowds. But Susan's childhood wasn't just filled with dreams. Her father, still troubled by the war, became very angry and often took it out on his family. Susan was the target of his anger many times. He would beat her over small things, like when he didn't have enough money to provide for the family. This went on for years. In 1997, Patrick Boyle passed away after a long illness. During his last years, Susan took care of him. Even though they made peace before he died, the pain from her childhood stayed with her. The scars from her early life didn't go away, even after she became famous. Looking back on her father's death, Susan said she learned to forgive him. She shared that forgiveness helped her heal, though she could never fully forget the pain. Even after becoming a star, Susan carried the memories of her tough childhood with her. Susan Boyle's story is one of resilience, talent, and the ability to overcome hardships. From being judged harshly on a TV stage to becoming a global sensation, her journey proves that it's never too late to follow your dreams, no matter what others think. Let me tell you the story of Susan Boyle, a singer whose journey was filled with challenges, but she never gave up. Susan's life shows us that even when things are tough, you can find a way to move forward. She has had to deal with good and bad memories, but over the last 6 months, she is focused on letting go of the past and finding a new self. Susan's early life wasn't easy. She was the youngest of 6 sisters and 4 brothers. When her mom, Bridget, was pregnant with Susan, she was already 47 years old, and the family didn't have much money. During Susan's birth, she was briefly deprived of oxygen, which caused learning difficulties, or so she was told. Later in life, she learned that her diagnosis was wrong. Still, this made her school years very hard. At school, Susan was often bullied by both students and teachers. She struggled to learn quickly, and the system wasn't kind to slow learners. She once said, "I was a slow learner, and I couldn't keep up." Susan's teachers didn't understand her learning difficulties, so they punished her in terrible ways. They would hit her with a belt when she didn't do well on a test or in class. The bullying from other kids was even worse. They called her Susie Simple and made fun of her all the time. Susan shared these painful memories in interviews, saying that school was the worst time of her life. She felt like the bullying held her back and made it harder for her to succeed. When Susan stepped onto the Britain's Got Talent stage, it was her way of proving all those bullies and teachers wrong. Her incredible audition was a sweet revenge on everyone who told her she wouldn't amount to anything. Later, she would write and sing a song called You'll See on her first album, reminding those bullies that despite everything, she made it. But Susan's journey didn't stop there. In 2011, she revealed another tough part of her childhood that no one knew about. Besides her learning difficulties, Susan also had epilepsy. Epilepsy is a condition where people have seizures. Many famous musicians like Elton John and Neil Young also have epilepsy, but Susan's condition was handled very poorly. At school, Susan would often faint during her lessons because of her epilepsy. When she woke up, the kids would gather around her and make fun of her even more. Her teachers and parents didn't know how to deal with her epilepsy either. At home, her parents would sometimes wrap her in blankets during her seizures, but other times she was left to take care of herself. When she asked for extra help, her father would call her touchy and dismiss her concerns. Because her condition was misunderstood, her epilepsy was left untreated. With so many struggles at school, it's no surprise that Susan graduated with very few qualifications. This made it hard for her to find a job. She applied to many places, but often didn't get called back or failed the interviews. Eventually, she got a job as a trainee cook at a college, but that only lasted 6 months. Despite all these challenges, Susan always found joy in singing. She would perform at local venues, even though it wasn't a full-time career. Music was her escape and gave her hope. Then, something tragic happened that pushed Susan to follow her dream even more. In 2007, Susan's mother passed away. Losing her mom was incredibly hard, but it also made Susan realize that life was too short to give up on her dreams. She decided to take a big risk and audition for Britain's Got Talent. And as we know, that audition changed her life forever. Susan Boyle's story teaches us that no matter how tough things get, you can still follow your dreams. She went from being bullied in school to becoming a global star, proving that it's never too late to find your voice. Susan Boyle didn't have an easy life, but she never gave up on her dreams. Even though she had a tough childhood and a hard family life, she kept believing in herself. Her story shows how strong and forgiving she is, even when things weren't going her way. Susan grew up in a small 4-bedroom house with her parents and siblings. She was the youngest of a big family. As time went on, her brothers and sisters moved away. When her dad passed away, only Susan stayed behind to take care of her sick and old mother. She also had her loyal cat Pebbles by her side. Even after becoming a famous singer, Susan stayed in her childhood home. She could have moved anywhere, but she liked the simple life. She didn't need fancy things to make her happy. When she wasn't caring for her mom, Susan spent time singing at her local church. She sang in the choir and helped by visiting older members of the church, bringing joy and music into their homes. It was her way of giving back, and it made her happy. Susan always loved singing. She tried sending tapes to music companies, TV producers, and radio stations, hoping someone would give her a chance. But no one ever called back. It was hard not to get discouraged, and sometimes she thought about giving up. But her mother always told her to keep going, to keep trying. Then something terrible happened. Susan's mother passed away when she was 91 years old. Susan was heartbroken. For days, she stayed inside her house, refusing to eat or talk to anyone. Losing her mom was one of the hardest things she had ever gone through. But even in her grief, Susan remembered her mom's words. She knew her mother wanted her to follow her dreams. So Susan decided to take her music career seriously and auditioned for Britain's Got Talent. It was her way of honoring her mother. What most people don't know is that Susan had auditioned for other shows before Britain's Got Talent. She had tried out for 12 different things, including the X Factor, but she didn't even get to the audition stage on that show. Some people said it was because of how she dressed. Susan wasn't interested in fashion. She just wanted to sing. She didn't think musicians should have to dress like runway models. Britain's Got Talent finally gave her a chance. But when she first stepped on stage, the audience wasn't kind. People didn't think Susan looked like a singer. Some of them laughed. The judges didn't seem impressed either. When Susan said she wanted to be as successful as famous singer Elaine Paige, Simon Cowell even made a face like he didn't believe her. No one expected much from Susan, but then she started to sing. When she performed I Dreamed a Dream from Les Miserables, everything changed. Her voice was so powerful that it stunned everyone. The audience, who had been rude at first, was suddenly silent, amazed by what they were hearing. The judges, who had been doubtful, were left speechless. Amanda Holden, one of the judges, said it was the biggest wake-up call the audience ever had. Susan's audition wasn't just a performance. It was a tribute to her mother. Susan believed her mom was watching over her, even though she wasn't there in person. She said her mom was there in spirit, standing right beside her as she sang. That one moment on stage changed Susan's life forever. She went from being an unknown singer to a global superstar. People all over the world were talking about her. Her story and her talent inspired millions. Susan Boyle's journey wasn't easy, but she never let the tough times stop her. She stayed true to herself, and in the end, she achieved her dream. Even after all her success, Susan is still the same humble person she's always been, and she's proof that you should never judge a book by its cover. Susan Boyle's story is one that will grab your heart. When she stepped onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent, the audience didn't know what to think. She wasn't dressed like a star, and some people even laughed. But when she started singing, everything changed. Her voice was so powerful that everyone, including the judges, was left speechless. People went from doubting her to giving her a standing ovation. In just a few minutes, Susan became a global sensation. Her audition clip went viral, with millions watching it online. In fact, it was viewed over 100 million times. Susan was suddenly famous. Even though she didn't win Britain's Got Talent, coming in second place didn't matter. She had already won something bigger, the hearts of people everywhere. For those who have dreams but think it's too late, Susan's story shows that dreams can come true at any age. She was living proof of that. Her journey didn't stop after the show. In November 2009, she released her first album, I Dreamed a Dream. It was an instant hit, breaking records everywhere. In just the first week, it sold over 2 million copies. The album became the fastest-selling debut by a female artist. People couldn't get enough of her music. She wasn't just famous in the UK, but also in America. Her voice reached all corners of the world. By the end of 2009, her album had sold over 9 million copies worldwide. She even made it into the Guinness World Records, setting multiple records, like having the fastest-selling debut album by a female artist in the UK. At 48 years old, Susan became the oldest person to reach #1 with a debut album. Her name was now known everywhere, and she was a true star. Susan even got the chance to appear on America's Got Talent. This time, people were kinder and more welcoming to her. No one doubted her anymore. Her success allowed her to finally embrace the world around her. She was no longer scared. Instead, she was enjoying life, fully stepping into the spotlight as the star she was meant to be. After the success of her first album, Susan didn't stop. She released 2 more albums soon after: The Gift in 2010 and Someone to Watch Over Me in 2011. She continued to surprise fans with more music, including a Christmas album called Standing Ovation in 2013, another album called Hope in 2015, and A Wonderful World in 2016. But with so much success also came some hard times. Susan took a break from music. As old age and illness began to slow her down, people started to wonder if her music career was over. However, Susan wasn't done yet. In 2019, she celebrated 10 years in the music industry with a special album called 10. This album featured some of her best songs, reminding everyone why they fell in love with her voice in the first place. Once again, Susan proved she could rise above the odds. However, despite her successes, there was also sadness. Over time, Susan's health had worsened, and fans noticed a change in her. She wasn't the same bubbly performer they had first seen on Britain's Got Talent. Susan began living a quieter life, far from the spotlight. Even though she stepped away from the glitz and glamour, her music remains unforgettable. Beneath all her success is a story of resilience, hope, and courage. Susan Boyle, the woman with the incredible voice, showed the world that it's never too late to follow your dreams. Susan Boyle's life was full of highs and lows, but her story shows that even when things are tough, we can keep going. When Susan first appeared on Britain's Got Talent, she wowed everyone with her voice. But being famous wasn't easy for her. She wasn't used to the long days of interviews, dealing with rude people, or having cameras follow her all the time. Right after the show's finale, Susan had to go to the hospital because she was so worn out. She had worked so hard, but in the end, she didn't win Britain's Got Talent. After losing the show, Susan had a breakdown. She yelled at the show's staff and even threw water at one of them. People said she was really upset and couldn't handle the stress. That night, the police were called to her home because she was acting strangely. Later, she was taken to a place where she could get help for her mental health. News about her breakdown spread quickly, and soon everyone knew about it. Many people blamed the show for not taking care of Susan. They said the producers ignored how tired and weak she was just to make sure the show got good ratings. There was even talk of an investigation, but it was dropped. Even though things were tough, Susan didn't give up. She kept singing and performing for her fans. But in 2013, she got some shocking news. She learned she didn't have brain damage like doctors had told her when she was a child. Instead, she had something called Asperger's syndrome, which is a kind of autism. This news was a surprise to Susan, but it was also a relief. For years, she had thought she had permanent brain damage, but now she knew the truth. Talking about her diagnosis, she said she had always felt like the label of brain damaged was unfair. She was like everyone else, just with her own way of doing things. She hoped people would be kinder to others with autism after hearing her story. Fans loved how honest Susan was about her diagnosis. She didn't try to hide it and was open about her struggles. This made people appreciate her even more. But that same year, Susan had to face another health challenge. She was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which meant she had to give up her favorite comfort food, chocolate. This was tough, especially while adjusting to life with Asperger's. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, things got even harder for Susan. She had to be extra careful because of her health issues. For over 2 years, she stayed home to avoid the virus. This put a pause on her music career. But life wasn't just about fame and music for Susan. At home, she had more problems to deal with. In 2010, she bought herself a nice house with her earnings. But some mean people in her neighborhood made her life miserable. They threw rocks at her house and even tried to break in. It got so bad that Susan moved back to her childhood home and gave the new house to her niece. Susan was sad about how things were going. But then something even worse happened. In 2015, her sister Bridie, who was very close to her, passed away from cancer. Bridie was like a rock for Susan, always supporting her, especially when the media criticized her. Susan was heartbroken and needed time to recover. Bridie had always been there, even during Susan's tough fight with her brother Jerry. Susan's success brought a lot of money. And unfortunately, It also caused family problems. Susan had given Jerry £75,000 to help save his business, but this caused a huge argument in the family. Jerry even threatened to harm himself if Susan didn't help. The fight between Susan and Jerry was tough, and they stopped talking to each other for a long time. But in 2016, after Susan had another public breakdown at Heathrow Airport, the two made up and became close again. Today, Susan's story reminds us that fame doesn't always bring happiness. Behind her beautiful voice and her big success, she had to face many struggles. But through it all, she stayed strong and kept going. Susan Boyle is a famous singer who has faced many challenges in her life. In 2022, Susan revealed some sad news. She had a minor stroke. This stroke made it hard for her to continue singing the way she used to. But even after all of this, she never gave up. The stroke happened after she had a great performance on Britain's Got Talent, the same stage that made her famous 14 years earlier. She was invited to sing with the West End cast of Les Miserables, and the moment was emotional for everyone. Right there, in front of the audience, Susan shared that she had suffered a stroke the year before. She said, "It's extra special for me because I had a minor stroke, and I thought it would be crazy to be back on stage. But I've done it." After her performance, she took to Instagram to explain how hard she had worked to get back on stage. Susan had to go through speech therapy to be able to sing again. But her hard work paid off when she sang her famous song, "I Dreamed a Dream." Though her stroke made things difficult, Susan is still doing her best to keep singing for her fans. Even though she doesn't perform as often anymore, when she has the energy and feels up to it, she still belts out a tune. Susan doesn't appear in public as much as she used to. And in a recent interview, she mentioned that one of her biggest regrets in life was not having kids. But Susan does have a secret love life. She has a boyfriend from America, and though his identity is still unknown, we know they are very happy together. In 2016, Susan mentioned she was talking to an American doctor, but things weren't serious back then. Now, it seems their relationship has grown, and they are in a stable and happy place. Her boyfriend even joins her for special occasions like her birthday. Despite her challenges, Susan Boyle keeps going. While her fans are excited for new music, they also understand that she is facing tough health problems. But Susan is a gift to the world, and we can wait patiently for her next big moment.